Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Serbian students plan protests in Novi Pazar on Sunday over alleged government pressure after more than 200 students lost their status and dozens of professors were dismissed at the State University of Novi Pazar. The demonstration is part of a wider year-long wave of student-led activism sparked by the Novi Sad railway station canopy collapse in 2024, reflecting growing youth distrust of the government and the European Union. Joining us now to provide more on this moment is Mariya Heletiy, Advisory Board Member at the International Diplomacy Initiative. Good to have you on TVP World.
Good morning.
So I highlighted there the reasons behind this protest on Sunday, but tell us, how does this all connect to the broader national movement in Serbia?
Actually, all protests which started last year in November after this tragic accident, actually they are connected. They have different waves because a lot of happening. At the beginning, it was collapse of the canopy and death of 16 people, which actually led to the first protest, which were launched by students, and actually the students demanded to punish people who were responsible for this incident and dismissal of the government. First, it was Minister of the Transport, but later entire government. With the protest, everything started to develop because government did not respect this right of students to protest, did not actually respond to demands properly. They tried to first use force against students who protested peacefully on the streets. Later, they also used different police units. They even created a new police unit which actually control police, which was engaged against students. And they were heavily beaten students, and also a lot of dozens of students were taken to the custody. And it actually brings another wave of protest. And now it is a situation with the pressure of students and professor of the university, and they have new demands. They would like to change the administration in this university because they believe if the government will not change the administration, and if there is no new rector is appointed, but there are also other people like administration and council. If they will not be appointed, the university could not actually function properly. And such case as we now observe with Novi Pazar University can be used also against other universities across the country, and students actually want to stop this practice and ensure free access of students to education and basically free right of professors to work at the university and have own opinion.
Right. I was going to ask you about what we can expect and why the reasoning that is. Now, you said this is really key, denying students certain types of access. I mean, looking at the greater scope of all this, how do you see this play out? I mean, with the protests expected today, what are the impacts going to be? Do you see this, as you already alluded to, repeat at other universities? Is this going to be another one of those flashpoints which will grow out and be that next wave of protests? I mean, the students have been front and center throughout this whole year, haven't they?
I believe that the protest will only grow because what we observe from the beginning of the protests, at the beginning it was a smaller scale. Now the protests enlarge and move from cities to villages. People started, even in villages, started to discuss politics and also being not very satisfied with the Vučić approach to the country management. And basically, I'm sure it will lead to the bigger protests and maybe even some changes in power. But still, my understanding, the government doesn't want to respect this, doesn't want to listen protesters, and basically they only implement some requirements partially, and some requirements which are very kind of easy to implement, like to dismiss some politician and replace this with another one. But basically, it does not allow students say that their demands are implemented, and also actually corruption, which is the main reason of this protest, is somehow counter offended. Therefore, the problem that if Vucic and the government will not hear this demand, I think Serbia has a chance to become widely protested country with, I don't know, maybe more serious demands to hold presidential elections, not only parliamentary as they requested before, but maybe to hold presidential elections early to ensure some transition of power.
Now you said, interesting, Mariya, from the cities now moving to the villages. We've seen the pictures. We know that the students have been very much the visible face, the representation of a lot of this protest against President Vucic. Do you find that other areas of society now, are they more supportive of this movement? I mean, there's been sort of a back and forth, but do you see now other parts of society supporting what the students want, or ultimately is this only for students?
No, indeed, there are more and more parts joining this protest. At the beginning, only students started this protest, but later parents joined it, and also professors joined this protest, and they supported the protest. They also, for example, contributed with some donations or food donations to actually help students to protest, because basically they needed to stay on the square or street. They need some food also. But in addition to that, some former military, some veterans joined the protest. At the same time, we observe that there is another group of population, which is either followers of Vucic as his political party, and also people who are paid. Like, for example, Vucic at some point organized a parade, military parade, and also engaged own supporters of people who were at least branded as supporters of Vucic, and they also created kind of counter-Maidan, counter-protest. And basically, it also showed that still among populations there is a division. Some people stand for this protest and will support it, and maybe in future some will join. But we also will have another group of people who will still continue to support existing power, but for different reasons. Sometimes they believe that Vucic is the best president. Sometimes they just believe that any changes in country would be not very good for the country, because they can bring some damage or bring worse politicians than Vucic.
You mentioned President Vucic there. I mean, if we look back at all this from Novi Sad, from the 2024 disaster there, I mean, this whole thing has been building, momentum has been building. We've seen major protests around the country. We've seen also students take those bike rides or walk all the way to send a signal also to the European Union. So I'm just wondering here, though, I mean, how does the EU fit in all this? Because it seems that at the same time, there's an outcry for European support for this movement, but it hasn't really been given by the European Union that much. What does the European Union play in all this? How do the students there in Serbia, how do citizens view this path and what Europe is or isn't doing in all this?
Europe is not engaged in this protest. Europe has very limited comments about that. Usually the most critical, I would say, it is resolution of the European Parliament, which called actually to ensure the right of peaceful assembly to citizens. But it was issued because the government actually used a lot of pressure, a lot of violence against students, against protesters, basically. And there are cases when they just very heavily beaten some people on the street, even those people didn't have any weapon, anything to receive such attention from the police. Another case, they also dismiss people who support these protesters. For example, the general of Serbian army was dismissed, was asked to resignate because his son was also a part of the protest, and Vucic learned about it. At the same time, we don't see other serious comments. I'm sure they are transmitted privately, but still I believe that European Union is more focused on situation in Ukraine. And indeed, the situation with the war between Russia and Ukraine is very critical. At the same time, it doesn't want to interfere much in this situation in Serbia. Moreover, the problem, I believe that also it is a student protest. It's not a political protest. Students do not engage any political parties, even opposition. Therefore, this protest is kind of protest without a leader. And even if can we imagine that we will have elections in Serbia? Basically, we do not see anybody who will replace Vučić or his ruling party.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you made, because as you said, there's no political party yet that has stepped in. There's no political party that the students themselves have claimed. There's no discernible leader in all this. I mean, is that because there simply just isn't that kind of, let's say, evolution yet of this movement? Is it because of fear? I mean, how does this movement then really move forward as a political force if there is no political association or any leadership?
The problem, the students believed that the leader will appear somehow, but they don't want to link themselves neither with a ruling party nor with opposition, because the main reason of the protest is corruption. And as they say, corruption kills, and they try to link corruption, which was actually used during the construction of this facility, to death. And basically because of that, because they believe that ruling party and Vučić and also opposition, they are linked to corruption, because during previous elections, opposition was also had some scandals related to corruption. Therefore, they don't want to engage opposition in this process. And even if you look at, for example, support of population doesn't support heavily opposition, and opposition is very divided. It's very similar to ruling party. Sometimes when you ask them questions about sanctions against Russia or status of Kosovo, which is critical, for example, for the European Union, they will have either divided response, some might support, some not, or they will try to not to respond to this question, because I believe if they do not respond, they basically does not support neither sanctions nor independence of Kosovo. And it means that in Serbia there is no leader, which is obvious. Maybe in the future it will appears, but now, as for now, we do not see anybody who can actually drive the political agenda and actually lead students of this protest to some political changes in the country.
Okay. And I'm also curious about the future in all this in 2026. Where do you see this movement go? What are the demands ultimately going to be? You mentioned they've changed as well. Where do you see this whole protest movement go in 2026? Is it going to be remaining the same? Will it gain new momentum? Will there be new demands? How do you see it play out in next year?
Somehow I believe that it will continue, it will increase, but I don't think that it will lead to some political changes, because there is no political leader who can actually drive the process. At the same time, I think Serbia will experience soon presidential elections, and for Vučić it is second term. I don't think he will change constitution and try to be elected for the third term. And maybe it will be the moment for Serbia to actually re-elect. And I hope till the time in Serbia there will be new leader who can actually take responsibility for Serbia and lead Serbia to European future.
Okay. And just last quick one, just a last sentence, like Vučić under pressure at home, abroad. He didn't actually go to that EU Western Balkan summit this past week. So what about Mr. Vučić's future in all this? Just give us your quick take.
I believe that Vučić is interested in things which is important for him. I'm talking about Kosovo status. He will not recognize Crimea and other occupied territories because of Kosovo. For him, it's also important to be a supplier of weapons to Ukraine, and I think he will continue to do this. But I don't think he will go further and introduce any sanctions against Russia or play more significant role in this part.
All right, so it will remain to be seen what will happen, but it's going to be still a very important area. We're going to keep our eyes on what happens in Serbia next as the student movement continues. Look, thanks so much for all that. That was our guest, Mariya Heletiy there. Thank you so much for all your input. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.